And how about the Spurs? How bad they are this year.
I picked at the start of the season that this would be the year to end their streak. I didn't think they'd be this bad, though. They're even worse than I thought. I thought they'd at least be close to 500. I think
Do the
10
Spurs
games
trade DeRozan? That's the question, because I've been hearing stories coming out that DeRozan wants out of San Antonio. Do they trade DeRozan? I mean, DeRozan is not a winning player. He's never been a winning player. He's been a good player in this league. He's been a borderline all-star. That's what he's been.
Right. I think in today's game, his value is dropped too because he's not a great three-point shooter. He's more of a traditional mid-range type shooter who can defend a little. But again, a lot of that was more of the systems he was in. And obviously now with the Spurs, Popovich helps him out a lot, that system. And then Dwayne Casey before that. Dwayne Casey wasn't a great coach, but he was a good defensive mind, which helped out a lot of players. So how much of that is those systems? So
who would have thought that the Portland Trailblazers and the San Antonio Spurs would be out of the playoffs right now as we speak?
I still think Portland will make it, but yeah, that's surprising. They haven't gotten it going to full extent. Lillard has been hurt for a little while. I think he's missed the last 2 weeks, but
there's only 20 games left.
I'm still surprised they weren't able to at least get to 500 or something like that at this point, because I think they're a dangerous team if they make it, but they still have to make up some ground over the Grizzlies right now.
And Golden State, as bad as they look, you look at what they're going to have coming back next year. You have Klay Thompson coming back from his ACL injury. You'll have a healthy Draymond Green. You'll have Steph Curry healthy next year. You'll have a top 5 pick probably in this year's draft, maybe even the number 1 pick in this year's draft. And then you'll probably have enough money to add another player, another decent player in the mix. Oh, I'm sorry, you have Andrew Wiggins too. So, I mean, this roster is stacked. And as bad as Golden State has been, even with adding Andrew Wiggins, you would think it would make them a better defensive team. It's made them worse.
Well, Andrew Wiggins hasn't really done well as a primary option, so that has something to do with it too. But we'll see what happens when Steph Curry comes back, how they'll mesh up, because otherwise they could move Wiggins again too, like they did with D'Angelo Russell.
I look at, and I think Wiggins should have went to Toronto. That's where he's from.
That's interesting. I could see that happening.
I would have never taken that contract from the Timberwolves, especially when you're seeing what was going on. At the time, Thibodeau was running the organization. He gave Karl-Anthony Towns the contract that he got, and he also gave Andrew Wiggins the contract that he got too. But I was very surprised, Andrew Wiggins, being that he was almost off his rookie contract, that he wouldn't, check out the waters and see who was available out there that was going to give him almost as much or somewhere the same amount of money that the Timberwolves gave him. And the Timberwolves gave him a max contract, but taking $20 million less and going back to your hometown, it might have resurged him. And I don't think Wiggins is anywhere close to the player that anybody thought he was going to be coming into the NBA.
Yeah, he's a decent player, but he's not the number 1 pick type star that you were hoping for.
No, he's like a second-tier player.
Right, he's good as a second option, and that's why I think
he's not even going to be a 4th option.
Not on the Warriors, if he stays with the Warriors, but that's why I'm saying that makes it even more valuable, because he can get a guy that's a second-tier player to be able to flourish as a 4th option in that offense, because the core of the Warriors are still going to run what it normally does. Whether it's as good, we don't know, but it's still going to run what it is, and Wiggins is going to be three-point shooter. He's going to be maybe an occasional ball handler and the defender.
And I'm not taking shots at the New York Knicks, because I'm a Knicks fan, and I speak the truth about the Knicks, but going back to the Knicks, where do the Knicks go in the offseason? Like, where do they go in free agency? They have Julius Randle for another 2 years on a good contract. I think they're paying him $16 million.
I think it's $15 a year for 3 years.
They still have Mitchell Robinson under his rookie contract. They have Trier, who we have barely seen so far this year, which is unbelievable. I mean, this is a guy that had a very good season last year, being that he was an undrafted player, and he got his contract in the offseason, and Miller and Fizdale has not used him. Even Dotson, we have seen nothing with Dotson.
You've hyped up Dotson for a while.
Dotson's a good shooter.
He is, I know.
It doesn't make any sense why they haven't used Dotson.
Maybe because he's only a shooter. That's really it.
You look at the New York Knicks, where do they go in free agency? Nobody wants to play there. You kicked out Spike Lee, so you don't know how long it's going to take Spike Lee to come back and sit down, or maybe even rep the Knicks again, where it's going to draw maybe some kind of conversation where maybe some of these players would want to come and play with the New York Knicks in Madison Square Garden. I mean, right now, you have Charles Oakley trying to get James Dolan out of his seat as the CEO of the New York Knicks organization because of the whole thing with Spike Lee. And the Knicks have been the laughing stock of the league in the last 20 years. The Knicks have more losses than wins than any team in basketball in the last 20 years. The Knicks. The Mecca. The number one place when it comes to grooming basketball players. Nobody wants to come and play here. People want to blame James Dolan? Fine, blame James Dolan. James Dolan is one of just very few reasons why players don't want to play in New York. Is it geography? Maybe it is. Maybe Jeff was right. Maybe it is because it's cold over here half the year. I don't think it's any of the above. I think the problem with the New York Knicks right now is talent. And nobody's going to want to come over here when you have no talent. You have a bunch of young players that have not developed, and one young player that could develop into a superstar. You heard James Harden the other day talk very high of R.J. Barrett, that he thinks R.J. is going to be a star in this league when he figures things out as a player in this league. And you could see that he can draw a foul at will every time he goes to the hole. But he has a problem shooting free throws. And he's not a Ben Simmons. I think he's a better player than Ben Simmons.
Yeah, at least he can shoot. Ben Simmons can shoot.
But what worries me about the New York Knicks is they couldn't keep KP where, and I do want to say something about KP. And Evan Permuta posted something on his Facebook today. And I took a shot back at him. He says, that's why KP didn't want to stay with the Knicks. Let's be honest here. He was never staying with the New York Knicks. It had nothing to do with ownership. It had nothing to do with talent either. And everybody says, well, he wanted talent. He wanted Carmelo Anthony. Let's be honest. It had everything to do with Jeff Hornacek and the Hernan Gomez thing and Phil Jackson. What Phil Jackson said to LeBron James, and it had the league in a stir because he said something about LeBron James and his posse of friends. KP didn't want to be here because his brother wanted to be an executive or a vice president or a part of the organization where he has say of what the team should do or should not do, which James Dolan was not going to allow. And either did Dallas, if you can see right now with Cuban. Right now, when you look at the New York Knicks, they are a laughingstock. They have a bunch of good young players. They have a trending superstar in R.J. Barrett. Kevin Knox, who everybody thought, and they thought when they drafted him, Steve Mills and Perry thought that this kid was going to develop into a good player, and at least a starting small forward in this league. And right now, he's a 6th or 7th man on the Knicks team right now.
Streaky shooter, iffy defender.
If the Knicks could figure out the woes of some of their young players, then you can start possibly moving those young players for better talent.
Right. Some of them are still raw, too. I think you get to give Smith and Ntilikina, both of them are still teenagers. You could give them some time. And Ntilikina is already still well-rounded, despite not being able to do certain things.
He looks like a baby on the court.
Right, but he can defend, he can pass, he can do a lot of different things. So you know what he is with him. He just might not be the core piece. Smith, I think he's still got time. He's 19 years old right now. And
I think Ntilikina has a better chance of being a core piece than Dennis Smith Jr.
Okay, maybe, but I'm just still saying I would give those
Dennis
two.
Smith Jr. has not proven anything. And everybody that said Ntilikina, everybody that's saying Ntilikina should have been, Dennis Smith Jr. should have been drafted by the Knicks and Ntilikina should have not. Ntilikina is showing that he's getting better as a player. And Ntilikina is the same age as Dennis Smith Jr. Actually, I think he's younger.
He might be like a couple days younger. I think they were both 17 when they entered the draft, though. And regardless, they're both still raw where I think they can give him more time because the value they're going to get right now in terms of trading him is not going to be much. So you're better off trying to
You're not even going to get a second-round draft pick for any of them.
You're better off just trying to keep developing him, hopefully with better coaching staff and I guess better scouting as a whole. And again, just getting other talent around them because we know Barrett's going to be the main piece they're going to look at. And now they're looking for the other guys to help out in certain areas.
Well, and that's the thing. The Knicks are going to have to be very smart in the offseason. If a Karl-Anthony Towns becomes available, you trade that first-round draft pick. I don't care where you're drafting. I don't care if you're drafting 2, 3, or even number 1. If you're drafting at 1 and you can get Karl-Anthony Towns, you make that trade. You make that trade. Because you're right now in a stem of an opportunity. You're in a stint of an opportunity right now where if you land a Karl-Anthony Towns with an RJ Barrett, you have a chance to make the playoffs next year with the bad Eastern Conference. 2 years from now, you'll have the money to bring in another superstar to play with RJ Barrett and Karl-Anthony Towns. And then you can start talking about championship-born, championship-competitive team in the Eastern Conference.
You know what's interesting, too, with Karl-Anthony Towns? If they do bring him in, one of his best friends in the league, who's also a Leon Rose agent, is Devin Booker. So that could be somebody that could be interesting. I think he has 3 years left on his deal after this year that he signed with Phoenix. So he could be somebody down the road if they get Towns that Towns might try to lure in, and obviously Barrett, he can have some influence on that.
And I'm not saying Karl-Anthony Towns is going to the Knicks. But everybody knows Rose is now the president of the organization, and he has say on reaching out to his old players and trying to talk them into coming to play in New York and try to win a championship with this young team.
Right, because most of the guys on this list have their other flaws. Either they're older or they're injury prone, like Embiid is, like we mentioned before. Mike Conley's older and not a good shooter. So it's really Towns and Booker. And if you look at it, if the Knicks could get that combination in the future, because they've said they've wanted to play together for a while, that could be something definitely very interesting.